Week 10 of college football brings us potentially several conference-defining football games. Today, we're going to break down the 6 best from this weekend, as well as talk about some potential upset alert games. And with the intro out of the way, I'd like to say hello and welcome to the JSA studio. I am your host, as always, Nathan, and today we are previewing Week 6 of college football. We are going to start out with maybe the most interesting game of this week because of injuries, and that is Kansas State at Texas. This game is going to be a slugfest. Kansas State is the Utah of the Big 12. They always play defense. They always have a good offensive line, and they will always play good, fundamentally sound football. Texas has all the talent in the world, but sometimes that talent can be mitigated by coaching from the opposing team. And with a backup quarterback now, even though Murphy played well this past week, we don't particularly know what Texas is going to look like. And I do think Malik Murphy is going to play this week. I don't see how Quinn Ewers can come back from that injury that quickly. And even if he could, I don't particularly think they would bring him back for this game if they weren't 100% positive that he was 100%. Quinn Ewers has the type of injury that just takes time. We don't particularly know how long that is going to be, but that's enough about that. Let's instead try to focus on what the game is going to be. The biggest matchup is going to be probably Kansas State's offensive line versus Texas's defensive line. If Kansas State can move the ball consistently, they're going to win this game. Texas right now has been a big play offense so far this season. Now, Brooks, the running back, has been really good, and they've been able to move the ball consistently. But when they've scored, it's been on big plays, and the red zone numbers do tend to support that theory. Texas is like 126th in the country in red zone efficiency. They're not very good in that area of the field, and Kansas State is very good in that area of the field. Kansas is one of the best red zone offenses in the country. I mean, they score touchdowns like 85-90% of the time, some ridiculous number like that. So if they can move the ball consistently, they're going to score points, and they're going to score a lot of points. But if Texas's defensive line can come to play against what is a very good Kansas State offensive line, then they could be able to slow them down and make them have to throw the ball a little bit more than they want to. And if they're throwing the ball, Texas's defensive line can get to the quarterback. Then all of a sudden you're taking them out of their game plan and making them do what you want them to do rather than what they want to do. And what the Texas defense wants them to do is throw the football, because Texas is very good at rushing the passer, and they're a little bit not as good stopping the run. So if they can stop the run and they can force Will Howard to throw the football, then I think Texas's defense has a good chance to limit the amount of scoring that Kansas State can do. Offensively for Texas, everything is going to have to go through the run game. Brooks is going to have to be really, really good. You're going to have to use Murphy on some designed runs potentially. He's a very good athlete. He can do that, especially in the red zone, because Kansas State defensively as well as offensively is very good in the red zone. So this game is going to come down to, in my opinion, whether or not Texas can stop the run and the quarterback run. And on the flip side of the ball, the Texas offense and the Kansas State defense, can Texas convert in the red zone or get enough big plays to where it doesn't matter? And I think Texas is going to pull this off. When it comes down to it, I think Texas is going to be able to adapt defensively. I think they will likely be better prepared for the quarterback run than they were against Oklahoma. And I think Malik Murphy in a second start is going to make just enough plays to keep Texas alive for the playoffs. And I have Texas beating Kansas State 27-24. Second game on the docket, Missouri at Georgia. This is a game that a lot of people are very excited about. I am not as particularly excited about this game. I think this game is going to go a certain way. The spread is Georgia minus 15.5. I think that spread is a little bit low. I think Georgia should probably be favored by like 20 points or so. Missouri's defense is not good. It is rife with holes. They can rush the passer a little bit, but I don't think that's going to save them. And Georgia's offense, since they opened it up and decided to start trusting Carson Beck, which was the second half of the Auburn game, has been a top 5 offense in football and absolutely unstoppable. The injury to Brock Bowers has also forced Carson Beck to read the field a little bit more instead of just honing in on one target. He's been able to spread the ball around to his weapons a little bit more. They still have very good tight end depth even without Brock Bowers, and Carson Beck has actually been getting better every single week since Auburn because the coaching staff is now letting him run the offense as opposed to trying to keep him in check because he's a new starting quarterback. Now, Missouri has a puncher's chance in this game, so to speak. They could get lucky. They could hit a couple of big plays, and Carson Beck could sort of have that game that almost all new starting quarterbacks have, where for some reason they just end up having a bunch of turnovers for no reason. That could all happen. I don't think it's going to be this week because I don't think Missouri's defense is capable of forcing Carson Beck to make those kinds of plays. And I don't think Missouri offensively can do a whole lot against this Georgia's defense because I don't think they are built to properly take advantage of the tiny cracks in the armor that is Georgia's defense. Now, I don't think Georgia is infallible. We'll talk about this more next week when they play Ole Miss, but there are some areas of that Georgia defense that can be exploited, specifically the quarterback run game, which Ole Miss will be able to use. But Missouri is not going to be able to use that to gain an advantage. And when Georgia is just playing against a normal rushing game, they are maybe the most dominant run defense in the country. So there has to be that threat of the quarterback, and the quarterback is the one that is going to have to get all of the big plays running the football, and Missouri just does not have the personnel to take advantage of that. Now, they do have some serious talent at the wide receiver position. Luther Burden is maybe the second best wide receiver in all of college football, and they have other very talented wide receivers like Theo Weiss and Mookie Cooper. So they've got some weapons here. But Georgia has the best secondary in the country, so that's still an advantage towards Georgia's secondary here. I don't think Missouri is going to be able to pass the ball like they were against LSU. LSU's defense is completely not even comparable to Georgia's defense. Their defense is horrible. And that was really the only time that Missouri's offense looked absolutely elite. Now, they've looked very good to great even at times, but the only time they've ever looked elite is against a piss-poor defense in LSU. So I think Georgia has a definitive advantage on both sides of the ball, which is why I have Georgia winning this game quite handedly by the score of 45-21. I just don't think Missouri is there yet as a football team to compete with the likes of Georgia quite yet. I think Missouri has a very good chance to get 10 wins in the regular season. They have to play Tennessee and other teams, but they have a real good chance to go 10-2. I don't know if they're going to beat Tennessee. I haven't particularly looked at that matchup yet. That's something for next week. But I think Georgia handles this game convincingly. Next game on the docket here, Penn State versus Maryland. This game is interesting for a couple of reasons, and those reasons are that last week Penn State's offense looked dramatically better than it has really the whole year. They looked like they kind of opened the offense up for Drew Aller a little bit, let him throw the ball down the field, which he's quite good at, so that's good to see. But then also Penn State's defense started to show cracks that they hadn't shown really all year by giving up a whole lot of big plays too. And Indiana is not particularly a team that gets a lot of big plays. Like, they're decent. I think they're well coached for what it's worth. I understand that Tom Allen likely isn't going to be there at the end of the season, but I think he's a good football coach, especially defensively. But giving up that many big plays to Indiana, especially when Ohio State and Michigan didn't do that is a little bit concerning. And Maryland does have the ability to hit those big plays as well. So Penn State's offense appears to be getting better, but Penn State's defense perhaps is now starting to show some cracks in the armor, so to speak, which Maryland could hypothetically take advantage of. The spread for this game is Maryland +9. The over-under is 51. I think this is going to be a lower scoring game, and I tend to agree with that. I'm not sure Penn State's offense has really improved all that much, so I do think this is going to be on the lower end of the spectrum. This is also a little bit of a look-ahead spot for Penn State, but I do think when it comes down to it, Penn State is going to get the close victory, 24-21. Oklahoma versus Oklahoma State. This is not a game about X's and O's or even Jimmy and Joe's. This is a game about narratives. This is the last bedlam between two teams with opposite trajectories. Oklahoma these past 3 weeks have been on a downward trajectory. Oklahoma State these past 3 weeks has been on an upward trajectory. Oklahoma, from their perspective, this is their chance to get right. This is a rivalry game that they're going to show up prepared for and potentially can send out a message. From Oklahoma State's perspective, Oklahoma is leaving them out to dry, basically. They're leaving the Big 12 to join the SEC for no reason other than money. And they are forsaking a traditional rivalry that means a whole lot to both of these teams, especially Oklahoma State. And Oklahoma State is at home. And that environment is going to be second to none, maybe in the history of college football, because this is the last game of a traditional rivalry game. And Oklahoma State wants nothing more than to end Oklahoma's playoff chances and to end their chances at winning the Big 12 championship in their goodbye/farewell season. However, you don't see a whole lot of people talking about the Oklahoma narrative. Oklahoma cares about this rivalry too. They want to beat Oklahoma State in the final matchup in Bedlam. And they're coming off of a loss where they got embarrassed in the run game. And lo and behold, Oklahoma State can pretty much only run the football. Alec Bowman is not going to be good enough to beat this Oklahoma team throwing the football. So Oklahoma State is going to have to run in order to win this game. I think Oklahoma is going to come out just as motivated as Oklahoma State. Teams coming off of a loss in a game that they shouldn't have lost almost always hit that next level the next week. I think we're going to see a very good Oklahoma team play above their means this week. And I think Oklahoma is going to win the final Bedlam by a score of 45-35. It will be a closer game than that. Oklahoma will either kick a field goal or score a touchdown to put the game on ice late in the fourth quarter. Purdue at Michigan. Pretty much I'm only covering this game because I'm a Michigan fan, so we're not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about this game. Michigan is probably going to win. Ryan Walters was out talking to the media today, talking about the Michigan allegations, and I don't particularly want to get into that in this video. A video about that will be coming probably sometime 2 weeks from now, not next week, but probably the week after. But Purdue has not looked good this year. I was very high on them entering this season. I was very high on Ryan Walters, and they have a little bit disappointed me. Now, other teams are much better than I thought they would be, namely Nebraska and Syracuse, but that's not particularly an excuse for how this team has actually looked when they played football. They haven't looked very good, and I'm not sure, looking at their schedule, that they win another game this year. They're going to lose this week. They have a very good chance to lose to Minnesota, a very good chance to lose to Northwestern, and a decent chance to lose to Indiana in the rivalry game there. So unless Ryan Walters can really pull something out of his ass, they're not looking great for this year and heading into next year as well. So I don't really know what Purdue's program is going to look like going forward. I think Jeff Brom was a phenomenally underrated coach, and him going to Louisville was maybe the best decision I've ever seen a coach make, because Louisville is the kind of program that can compete for championships in the ACC and potential playoff berths, and Purdue is not the type of program that can do that in the Big Ten. So good for Jeff Brom. Purdue's future not looking great, and Michigan is going to easily handle this game by the score of 42-10, in my opinion. LSU versus Alabama, a game that could decide who gets to play Georgia in the SEC championship game. This is a game between two teams that match up almost perfectly against each other. Where LSU is strong, Alabama is strong, and where LSU is weak, Alabama is weak. Basically, it's just offense and defense. Alabama has a really good defense and a mediocre offense. LSU has an elite offense and a mediocre defense. Last year, Alabama fell victim to Brian Kelly's program-building win. This year, LSU fell victim to Mike Norvell's program-building win. They also managed to lose in a shootout to Ole Miss, which is going to haunt them because they have no chance of making the playoffs, even if they beat Alabama and Georgia in the SEC championship game. But specifically for this game this week, LSU versus Alabama is a showdown between two juggernauts. There is a little bit of a narrative going on here. Last year, this was in Death Valley, and Alabama lost a very close game that kept them out of the playoffs, and LSU got their program-building win. This year, the exact opposite might happen. I think Alabama is going to come out very motivated for this game. Although this isn't really a rivalry that people talk about, this is a rivalry in my opinion, because more often than not, over the past decade or so, these have been the best two teams in the SEC West. So this game typically decided who would get to go to the SEC championship game, and it does get pretty heated from time to time. So I think this is a rivalry. I don't know if you consider it a rivalry, LSU or Alabama fans, let me know in the comments section, but I do consider this a rivalry from an outside observer sort of perspective. And for this game, in order for Alabama to win, Alabama is going to need to slow the game down. They're going to have to get 3 or 4 stops on defense, which they're fully capable of doing even against LSU's very, very good offense. And they're going to have to take their time and methodically move the ball down the field using the run game against LSU's defense. They need to run clock on offense, because if you give LSU time, then you're not going to be able to really stop them offensively, because they play fast, they play effective, they play efficient, and they play hard. So when you give them more snaps, they're just going to wear you down, and Alabama can't afford that. I could go on and on about all of this, but at the end of the day, this game comes down to one thing, and that's the fact that I think Alabama wants it more than LSU. I think Alabama wants to avenge last year. I think they want to go to the SEC championship game to get back at Georgia for stealing the SEC spotlight from them for the past 2 years. And I think Alabama wins this game 31-28. Last thing we're going to talk about here today is some upset watch games. Virginia Tech over Louisville, Iowa State over Kansas, and Arizona over UCLA. Virginia Tech versus Louisville has more to do with the fact that the last time Louisville really got up for a game and kind of showed that they're for real, they then got beat the fuck out of next week against Pittsburgh. So I think we could see the up and down nature of this team come back to haunt them against a okay Virginia Tech team. Iowa State over Kansas, it's the same kind of a deal. Kansas, big emotional win this past week against Oklahoma. Iowa State's been really solid this year, much better than I think anybody thought they were going to be. And They just play sound football. So I think Iowa State could beat Kansas. Arizona over UCLA. UCLA can't play offense. Arizona is a bit more of a complete team. I think UCLA has an elite defense or a borderline elite defense. And I think Arizona can score points enough to where an inept UCLA offense can't score enough against Arizona. So I think that is a game that potentially could have upset written all over it. Unfortunately, that is all that I have for you today. Go ahead and drop a like if you liked the video, subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and if you disagree with me at any point, or if you just have something to say, go ahead and drop a comment down in the comment section below. Let's just keep it civil. After all, what do I know? I'm just some asshole on the internet giving you his opinion. I'll see you next time.